Hey everyone, I'm Delightful Dev, and this is how I took my GMTK entry from a basic prototype to a fully fledged free-to-play game. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for the huge support on my last devlog. We had almost reached 100 subscribers when I released it, and now we've almost reached 1,000. So, consider subscribing. I also want to thank everyone that joined the Discord. It's been nice chatting and sharing the development progress with you all. Check out the link in the pinned comment if you're interested in joining. In the last video, I showed you how I made Deep Waters in 48 hours for the GMTK Game Jam 2023. If you haven't played Deep Waters yet, I recommend trying it out because I'll be making a lot of comparisons between the old and new versions throughout this video. I'll have a link in the description for you. At the end of the last video, I mentioned that, with all the feedback I've gotten, I'm going to release a post-jam update to flesh some systems out, fix some bugs, and add an ending. In this video, I'll show you how I did all that and more. When I started work on this update, I had a solid list of things I wanted to do. I needed to fix all the bugs, add more interesting upgrades to both the diver and the boss, add an ending, and balance some things. This list would become quite a bit larger as I kept working. After reading the feedback I got from the Jam submission page, I decided to start with changes to the divers. The divers had three major problems. They were easily cheesed, their abilities weren't very interesting, and they all moved and attacked in the same way. To fix this issue, I made it so the divers now predict your movement and shoot where you will be instead of where you are currently. This makes it so you can't just run circles around the divers. I also gave the divers a special ability that deals high damage if you get too close. That way, you can't just get all up in their face. In the original version, the diver could get 3 abilities. They could heal over time, they could shoot additional bolts, and they could fire bolts in a ring. In the new version, the divers can have up to 9 abilities. 4 defensive ones, 4 offensive ones, and 1 that does both. Let's take a closer look at 4 of the new abilities. Temporize makes the diver invincible for 2.5 seconds. It triggers when the diver is about to take damage and has a long cooldown. Barrier creates a shield around the diver every 6 seconds. The shield blocks 1 instance of damage. Bolt Star has the diver throw 2 shuriken that both explode in a ring of bolts after a brief delay. Rapid Fire has the diver charge for 1 second, then fire 15 half-damage bolts at a high fire rate. These are just a few of the abilities that make fighting the divers more interesting. But each diver still moved and attacked in the exact same way, so I needed to make each diver have different stats. In the original version of Deep Waters, I wanted it to feel like you were fighting different, stronger divers as you played, but it just felt like you were fighting one diver that was becoming stronger and stronger. So, in the update, I went ahead and created a script that can store diver information, like their name, their stats, and what abilities they have. Using this, I can handcraft each diver and give them unique ability and stat combinations, successfully making all the fights feel different. Now that the divers are up to date, I started work on the boss. The only change I made was that instead of selecting random upgrades after each fight, you now level a skill tree. I did this because the randomness of selecting upgrades would make some runs too easy and others too hard. Plus, I would need to make way more upgrades, so the skill tree was born. Skill trees are nice because they allow players to see all their options right at the start. This makes the upgrade section of the game much more strategy oriented. The skill tree is split into 2 parts, passives and abilities. Each upgrade can be obtained 3 times, and you get 3 skill points each time you beat a diver. This will give you enough skill points to make an interesting build, but not enough to run away with upgrades and become overpowered. There are plenty of interesting upgrades you can get from the tree that I won't go over in this video, but one that I should mention is Enrage. A lot of people were requesting more boss-like upgrades, so Enrage acts as your second phase. It lowers all your cooldowns and increases your bullet size after you've lost half your HP. You can also get other upgrades that make Enrage even stronger down the line. Speaking of boss-like things, I added a system that causes your tentacles to break off as you lose health. This acts as a bit of visual feedback that really drives home the boss concept. There's also an upgrade that makes you stronger for each tentacle you lose. After these changes, you may have noticed that there's no randomness anymore, turning what was once a roguelike game into a linear game. This, of course, was intentional. As much as I like roguelikes, the scope of this game is too small for that, so I decided to remove all the luck-based aspects and focus on skill and strategy. The original game didn't have a goal or story, so I went ahead and fixed that. The story is that you have a magical crown that was once powerful enough to make you king of the ocean. Over time though, the crown weakened and now it needs 10 human souls to be fully restored. So, you've challenged the strongest divers to a fight to the death. With a clear goal of defeating 10 divers, I wanted to have some sort of map or UI that shows how many divers you have left to defeat. After thinking on it for an afternoon, I decided on a crown with gems that light up after defeating each diver. With this new story and an actual ending, I wanted to reward players for beating the game. So, after restoring the crown, you get a trophy depending on which mode you played. Speaking of modes, there are 3 playable modes in this update. Skirmish has you face each diver sequentially until you beat all 10 in one sitting. You can retry if you fail without losing progress, and you can also reset your skill tree 4 times in case you're struggling. Gauntlet is just like Skirmish, except you can't retry or reset your skill tree. The last mode, Brawl, keeps track of which divers you've beaten in the other modes and lets you fight them in a single match. It's pretty much a practice mode. You can actually progress through the whole game in it, but you won't get any trophies. To accompany these new gameplay updates, I had my friend Francisco, who made the original music, make new tracks that play depending on which divers you're fighting. Check out Francisco's work in the description. This next part has a spoiler, so I recommend pausing the video and trying the game out through the link in the pinned comment. The Paragons are 6 divers that I added as a sort of post-game challenge. They have very high stats and have access to 2 new abilities. Denied makes it so the Paragons give 1 skill point instead of 3. This way, players can use their already designed tree with only a few minor upgrades. Overcharge lowers most of the Paragons' cooldowns, making them much more dangerous. These abilities may not be very flashy, but they change gameplay systems in a way that players must adapt to in order to survive. I split the Paragons from the main divers because I wanted players to have the option to keep going and challenge themselves, or just stop once they completed the story. The Paragons, of course, unlock a new trophy depending on which mode you beat them in. Finally, I added a button in the pause menu that a lot of people were asking for. It's a high contrast toggle. It makes the divers' bolts glow, removes the bullet trail for the boss's attacks, and it adds indicators on the boss and diver to better show everything during the fast-paced combat. That covers all the additions and changes for this update. Now I gotta go, because the Paragons Game Jam is happening right now. Once that's over, I'll be releasing a devlog, so consider subscribing. Thank you all again for the positive response on my last devlog, and of course, thank you very much for watching. If you want to support what I do, consider liking and sharing this video. And don't forget to join the Discord if you want to get inside information on things I'm working on.